Gemini, this is your April tarot reading. I need to tell you that I do it a little bit in advance because I don't do tarot readings during the month. Well, it is actually during the month of March, but it's Ramadan, which almost completely coincides with the month of March. So I put the energy into it for April, but I have to do it before March even. We've been tracing how you've got some fairly radical plans and how things aren't moving fast enough. I can see movement here, but I'm not too certain it's quite what you were anticipating. The overall energy is an energy of judgment. It's a sort of a day of judgment. It's a karmic judgment. I think it's in your favour for having waited and been persistent, but I can't be certain about that. Why have things been moving slowly? Well, all sorts of reasons, not least you've been tested, which is why I think you're actually going to be rewarded now. But part of the other reason is your own fear of the unknown. So even though you're wanting to do something quite radical, there are things you're fearful of. And I think that's potentially holding you back. Your current energy is that of walking away. Now, I can't believe you're walking away from your plans. I mean, it could be, but I can't believe that's how we should read it. Now, I think maybe a part of your plans you're walking away from. Or maybe you're disassociating even with your current life. But something has certainly caused you to do that. You're going to end up feeling like you have either people or things or actions dependent on you, and that you're struggling a bit to cope with that. The energy that leads to the outcome is you being a bit financially astute. Now, I've never thought this is really about finances, but of course, any radical plans will involve finances, and particularly if they're delayed. And I think I was right about that walking away, and indeed the fear, in as much as I do think you're self-restricting yourself a little. You're not prepared to take a leap of faith, and I think the universe is encouraging you to do that now. This financial astuteness leads to an energy of scoring some victories, quite small victories, but victories nonetheless. And I think those around you will realise that you are making progress. Maybe you don't feel it yourself. Now, the overall energy for this month, and it's an energy that runs throughout all the other energies, is judgment. But it's a day of judgment, type of judgment. In fact, it's called Pengadilan Ahir, which means the final judgment. Now, I'm not saying it is a final judgment, but it is a karmic judgment, if you like. I'm pretty certain it's going in your favour, and I'm pretty certain it's because of all the tribulations you've had to put up with, of sort of putting your plans somewhat on a hold. Now, I'm not seeing a big breakthrough this month, but I am seeing positive signs. So that's what I think it entails in this sort of judgment, that things start to become easier. And I think it's because of certain sort of revelations you have about yourself, certain understandings about how you yourself are affecting things. I think a part of the delay is your own fears of the unknown. But your plans are fairly radical. Let's say you're planning to move to another country, as I have done. We can never know all the permutations. But if we allow ourselves to be fearful of what those permutations could be, then that will act as an emotional barrier that will delay things and make it more difficult for this to become a reality for you. And I think that's exactly what you've been doing. There'll always be fears, there'll always be the unknown. You cannot possibly control such a process. At the end of the day, it has to be a leap of faith. I mean, if you jump into it without having done any research, then it's almost certainly going to go wrong. But, there are things that I could never have appreciated before I moved to Indonesia. Had I known them, would I have moved? I'm not sure I would. If you ask me the other way round, do I want to move back to the UK? The answer's no, so I don't want to put that too strongly. But yeah, of course there's fear of the unknown. The current energy is one of walking away, one of getting fed up with something and walking away. I'm almost, well, no, I am certain. You're not walking away from your ideas. Maybe one of them you've rejected, one of the options you've rejected. But I don't think it's that. I think you're walking away from a part of it. And I'm hoping what you're walking away is your desire for control. I'm hoping you're realising you just can't control this process. Now, again, coming back to me moving to Indonesia, there was a whole pile of assumptions about how people move and what the process is for moving, none of which seemed to fit me, none of which I wanted to really go down, because had I gone down these, I would have been acutely exposed if anything had gone wrong. So I wanted a degree of control, and I can understand you wanting a degree of control, but ultimately you can't control it. You've got two governments who don't speak to each other, who have completely different assumptions about the way this is going to go, and you in the middle trying to steer a path through it. Your future energy, I've got to admit I don't fully understand in this context. I always say that this energy is the energy of a single mother, and then I promptly say you don't have to be a parent and you don't have to be female. But it's somebody who's struggling with dependencies. But putting it into the context of what I've just talked about, that you cannot control everything in the process. There's many things you have to do, and it probably wears you out trying to do it all. But at times you can only do your best. And I think that's what this is about. It's saying, there'll be a lot of bureaucracy, there'll be a lot of hoops to jump through. But at the end of the day, you've only got so many hours in a day, so many days in a week, so many weeks in a year. You only have so much time that you can devote to getting this right, and at the end we can't be a perfectionist. We have to let some things go, and I think that's what this is about. Now, what's going to lead to the outcome is you taking control of the financial aspects of what's going on. Because if you haven't got the financial aspects right, it will scupper you. So again, let's talk about me moving to Indonesia, because your plans are quite radical like that. And one of the things about moving to Indonesia is even when you're granted your visa, your residence, you pick it up from another country. The assumption being that you pick it up from the country that you live in. But much of the work that you've had to do to get there, you can only do in Indonesia. So, for almost everybody, they've been working hard on trying to get to this position. So they're already in Indonesia. And then they're told, right, you've got to pick up your residence. And, in my case, travelling 7,500 miles, just to pick it up from London, which is an expensive place to get to and stay in, and not somewhere that I know that well, So, it's not really that practical. Well, very expensive option that. So I chose to pick mine up in Manila, and I thought, well, I'll make the most of it and have a little bit of a holiday with my wife. Most people pick theirs up in Singapore. But of course, should it be delayed, if you plan to pick it up one day in Singapore and you can't, you'd have to stay overnight because of, what is it now? Oh, well, you haven't got a way of getting back into Indonesia, you see. So you'd have to stay overnight. Well, that's very expensive, Now, I'd planned for a week's holiday with my wife in Manila. But it's just as well, because it took a week to get it. So, if you've not taken control of the finances, they will scupper you. Really, this reading is all about striking the right balance. The right balance between you having enough control over the process and submitting enough. And, we've got a card here of you self-restricting yourself. So, a part of the process of me becoming an Indonesian resident was I needed to get married to my wife. And a part of that process, and I believe this is more or less common across any countries, and that is you have to get a certificate from your embassy saying that you've either not been married before or that you're already divorced. In other words, there's no problem you getting married. So you have to book an appointment at the embassy and go, and you sign an affidavit and what have you. And so they said, okay, yeah, that's fine, you've got it now. You've got to get married within 30 days. Well, the visa for Indonesia is 30 days. So I'd already been there a couple of weeks, So it meant that I'd got about 2 weeks to arrange my marriage and get married, because I had to leave the country as well. And also I was running out of money because it cost me a lot of money. So I didn't really have the full money for the marriage. But, sometimes you just got to say, well, okay, let's make the best of it, and that's what you have to do. So the marriage wasn't as perfect as we'd like it. It was a bit rushed. I certainly spent all the money I had in Indonesia. And, clearly I couldn't invite anybody from the UK because I didn't know when it was going to be. And, yeah, you've got to be flexible. And what you have to recognise, and as I say, I'm pretty certain that this judgment is in your favour, and that is that you're going to be scoring some small victories, and people will see that they're victories, but it's not the end of the road. That take succour in it that these barriers are being removed. I know you want it all to be sorted, but I've lived in Indonesia 12 years, and I don't think I will ever get everything sorted. You see, both of my homes, I'm not allowed to own land, so neither of my homes are in my name. despite me having paid for them. Now you've just got to accept that, you know. In the 12 years that I've lived here, I've not been allowed to earn money, either through business or through work. Now, there would have been ways around it, but very expensive ways that probably made it not worth doing, you know. So, you know, no matter what I do, even if I became an Indonesian citizen, to the locals, I'd still be a foreigner. You know, it wouldn't matter what I did. People will still ask me where I'm from. And they don't mean, you know, up a mountain in Java. They mean, what is your country of origin? And, you know, if you say up a mountain in Java, they just think it's a huge joke. So, you know, maybe you'll never get to what your goal is. But take succour in chipping away at it, slowly getting towards it. Gemini, I've been watching your readings. You've got some very radical plans, something like moving overseas, but they're not happening quickly enough for you. Well, I think the universe intervenes in your favour, but maybe not quite as well as what you were anticipating. You see, a part of your problem is that, to a certain degree, you're fearful of moving or taking this step. And whilst you need a degree of confidence, there will always be unknowns. You'll never be able to know everything. And to a certain degree, you're also putting up barriers. You're trying to maintain control of the process. Well, you know, if we're talking of moving to another country, you're dealing with two different governments that don't speak to each other. And both of them think that they take precedence over you. So you trying to control the process just isn't on. And you do get frustrated, you know, you're walking away from some aspect of it. I don't think you're walking away from the idea at all. I think what you're doing is you're walking away. You might be walking away from one of the options, but I think you're really walking away from trying to exert too much control over it, which is a very good thing. The universe is suggesting that what you do need to control are the finances. Because if you're not in control of the finances, they will scupper you. Because you will find them eating away. And in the end, maybe you can't even do your plans because you've not taken care of the finances. So you do need to do that. And that leads to the outcome. And the outcome is you scoring some small victories. And, well, they might be quite big victories, but they're parts towards your plans, as opposed to seeing your plans come completely to fruition. And I think you need to be more realistic about your plans, because that's how they will work. That's how they will work. What would sort of scupper this is you holding on too tightly, you restricting yourself too much. At times you have to let go. Now the outcome is that you, because you're making progress, you're a little bit tied in knots. You've got so many things to do, so much bureaucracy, and I think you have to accept that you simply can't do it all. There are only so many hours in a day, so many days in a week, so many weeks in a year, so you have to do what you can. But I do think it's positive. I do think this is you making progress.